Yaneck, give us a helicopter view on what you did before you went into photography as a career.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my I have a business background. So I have my undergrad degree in information decision science. So basically, management of information systems. And I did my master's also in Chicago in managing information systems. That was my master with concentration in e-commerce. So after school, I went into consulting. So I first started as a developer, then into lead developer, then architect, and then team lead and director. And basically I went through all the levels of consulting you can imagine. I mean, I finished at the director level. I worked first from the big companies. I worked for Deloitte for a few years, and then I moved to a company called Avanade, which is a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. For those of you guys that don't know about Accenture, because it seems like a lot more people heard about Deloitte than Accenture, but Deloitte and Accenture are pretty much the same size, the two biggest consulting companies in the world. So the Avanade is implementation of Microsoft technology, kind of through Accenture, but they do on their own a lot as well.
What was the turning point that made you decide to go into photography as a career?
You know what? As I was working in the consulting field, I always loved photography. So I had my first camera, which is actually right, above me, the little camera on my shelf. That's my first camera that I received for my first communion back in Poland. So I always photographed. I moved to digital. I think when was that the Canon 10D came out or something like that. So it was my first digital camera. I was printing already back then from this digital camera. So I was always into photography. But at some point, somebody asked me if I, photographed I think it was a family and then wedding. And I was like, yeah, why not? So it's like I studied on my own. So while still working in consulting, and I was doing this on weekends. And yeah, at some point, I decided this is, I don't want the corporate world anymore. I need to, I'm going to try to, to become full-time photographer. Because, I was doing photography as a part-time job, I think for like 10 years. That was, I was working during the week in the consulting, I was traveling nonstop. And then once I go to the hotel, I'll do editing, and then I will photograph weddings or families on the weekend, and then go back to work, Monday to Friday to my regular corporate work.
Was that difficult to take that step? And I think I'm asking this because I know that a lot of listeners to this podcast, for example, might be in the same situation where I think it's not uncommon to start, your photography business almost like a side hustle, and then taking that step into doing that full time is very, very difficult. How did you? What did you put in place? How did you do it at the time?
You know what? It was very difficult. One of the main reasons why it was difficult is that my corporate job paid really well. So I didn't have a situation where my job was pretty bad. I could barely make it. Let me just put myself into do not disturb, so this way I don't have any notification. Perfect. Here it is. Um, and so the pay was really good. The benefits were good. Um, the quality of life was not good. Okay, because in consulting, the stress, at least some people in consulting thrive with a decent amount of stress, or they don't let the stress absorb that much their personal life. I was not that person. I always it was constantly in my mind. I couldn't relax. My mind was always racing. That I I started to, in consulting, I built a reputation that I could fix crappy projects. So basically, I got, whatever the shitty project was, that was like, okay, Yaneck, you go and fix it, right? So so basically, all my engagements were pretty tough because I had to rescue a project, bring it back on track, and that. So from the personal perspective, like my life, that's where I struggle. So that would help me make the decision. From the financial perspective, it was keeping me. That's why it took me so long to make the switch, because the money was good, right? um and at some point, we my I got to a point, like, mental health issue, struggling, because I remember, like, many times I'll go to like a client meeting, very stressful client meeting, and I would just like either walking or flying, and I'm like, I really don't want this. Like, I would prefer not to live right now than to go there. You know, it was also like those stupid thoughts, but I'm like, this is not good. This is way too much. Stress that I should be able to, or I should really have my life. And life is too short. Okay, and so that's why, like, what that actually the tipping point was. We Sasha and I, so my wife Sasha, we photographed a wedding on New Year's Eve in Chicago, and I remember it was like 4 degrees outside, and it was New Year's Eve, so obviously we missed our own celebration because we have to work. And we were driving back home after this wedding, like at 2 a.m. I remember, and we look at each other and we're like, why the heck are we doing this? Like, why, why are we here? Like, what is the appeal here? And so we look at each other, and my wife Sasha's like, well, what do you think? I was like, I think we need to move somewhere where the climate is better and make some drastic change. You know, so we decided we're gonna back in Chicago. We're gonna move to California and see how it goes. And at first, I was trying to make a move within my company to California, but there was no good opportunities, at that point, to move to California, or like something I didn't want to do. Which is the funny part, is they gave me opportunities to move to Orange County, but in my mind, I was set that I want to move only to San Diego, but there were no opportunities in San Diego. So there's like, okay, we cannot do it. And then guess what? Where am I now? In Orange County again. So, like, but it turned out for good. So basically, when there was no opportunity in California, we're like, you know what? Let's put some money on the side, and let's make them move to California, and maybe this is the right opportunity to become full-time photographers. Let's live on a very low budget, and have enough money for like 6 to 9 months of living expenses, and then just make the move. And especially that we didn't have any kids yet at that time, and which was another reason why we decided to quit the job and move to California, because at that point we had tried to have kids for a couple of years, and we were not successful. And guess what? After we moved to California, we Sasha got pregnant with Savannah, our first daughter, within 3 months after we moved to California. So this kind of magic of different locations, it's possible. So there's more benefit than just becoming full-time photographer. We just became parents as well.
It's perfect. What else could you possibly wish for?
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you did? So you found yourself in California. You've just decided to basically dump your successful job. You're setting yourself up as as a photographer. Nobody knows you there. You're in a new environment. Literally, you're going back to square one. You're starting on a completely blank page. What was the first thing you did?
Yeah. So sorry. The first, we had to find a place to live first, right? So we decided that we need to have a place, where we can photograph and live. So we found a loft, like I guess, live work kind of loft, situation. So we had like an open room, just one open room in the loft, and that was our studio and our living space. So we had a bed in the corner, and then we have in the kitchen, and then the rest was the studio, and like a sofa, and then TV to kind of meet with the clients. So that was the first thing, that we need to have a space to even photograph, right?
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.